Hey everybody, what's up? Welcome back. So this is our second uh, album side, if you will. We're going to be discussing today underrated bands, and what we decided to do was an A side and a B side, just like a 45. So the A side being what would be our more favorite, but we didn't want to exclude certain bands. So it's kind of like a top 10, but we're not putting them in any kind of order because I didn't feel comfortable doing that. And Jim, I don't know if you felt comfortable doing that either.
No, I don't have them in any particular order.
Yeah, I don't
The
think it's necessary for something like this either. So, yeah, I think what we're going to do is we're going to find some really different uh, levels of where we are in our musical tastes, which will be fun and exciting.
well,
So,
and Mark and I had talked a little bit through this prior to this. We talked through some of our bands. I have changed a couple since then, but we had a couple crossovers. But yeah, most of the time they were quite different, and I tended to gravitate towards earlier stuff, and you tended to gravitate towards more contemporary stuff. So it'll be interesting to see.
I think it covers the whole gamut. That's what's kind of
It
cool.
does. It does.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
why don't you begin with your first?
yeah. Before we do that, let's just remember, hit the subscribe button today and keep watching for more videos. Hopefully, we're going to entertain you some more, and this should be a good one for everybody. So, put your
Yeah, hit
list
the
together,
subscribe
Peter.
button, hit
We're
the like
going.
button.
Yeah, put your list together, and share what you had in mind. Maybe that'll be food for fodder later on. You never
Yeah.
know. Anyway, we're going to give you some. I'm going to talk to you about my first five, which are my A sides, if you will. And so I'm going to start with my first one here, which is one you haven't heard. This is the one I changed up.
Okay.
And I'm going to go with Frank Zappa and the Mothers of Invention.
I put him down. Yes, I had him down.
I got to thinking after we were talking the other day
Yep.
about it, and I was like,
Yep.
I love Frank Zappa,
Yep.
and what a phenomenal musician, what a phenomenal band.
What
And
a
you
phenomenal
just,
guitar player, and you just
oh,
don't ever hear about him.
you don't hear him on the radio. Yeah, because he's got weird lyrics that go with these crazy good, like,
Yeah.
the music is lyrical.
Yeah.
It goes with the storytelling, and it goes with the
Yep.
it's just fun.
Yeah.
Frank Zappa's
Well,
so,
he is so diverse in his output. From straight up rock to jazz to classical to avant-garde classical. I mean, it just
they
covers
touched
the gamut.
everything. Everything was on the table for them, and they just hit it. It was just masterful. And
And he pretty much
oh,
the he trained a lot of musicians. He had a lot of musicians go through his band that went on to incredible careers in other groups and solo careers and stuff. I mean,
yeah,
it's
I
just
mean, we could just talk about Frank Zappa as a
yeah,
whole episode if we wanted to, because it's
great
just that.
choice. Yep, I had him
Cool.
down.
Hey, yay! We did something together that we liked.
Yeah,
All right. So the next band I'm going to give you information on was really popular in the '90s for a brief stint, and I got really involved with them because I went to college in Pennsylvania, and this is a Pennsylvania band, York, Pennsylvania to be exact, and the band is live.
yeah, and that's one of my B sides.
Strong, strong band. Just
Yeah,
they performed really well live. But the recorded stuff is just really strong, and they're back out. I know I just watched a couple of videos of them. They were just recent ones that they're back together, and they sound amazing.
yeah,
Like they never ever took a break anywhere. And but I call them underrated because they got great airtime for a while, for a couple of years, and then all of a sudden just poof.
yeah,
And it's like nobody wants to play their music anymore. And I'm like,
yeah,
that is really strong music.
yep,
It speaks to people, and I think you know somewhere somebody missed the boat on this one.
yep.
That was my pick there.
Excellent.
Going backwards in time just a little bit, the band. I
Yep,
had the pleasure of watching the band once in my lifetime, and living here in the upstate New York region. I live very close to the Woodstock area, and this is an area where the band did a lot of work and stayed. Um, I think that they ended their career too soon. Um, they had the reasons, obviously, but when we talk about musicality and bringing all kinds of instruments in and the voices of their instruments, but the voices of singing,
Well, and they were doing a lot of the
harmonizing, their writing. And I don't know why it didn't really become as mainstream as it should have, although everyone knows most of their songs. If it comes
uh,
out on the radio,
it
you know
was
it.
tapping into American roots music, and it was more. It had a lot of folkloric type things.
Just watch The
Uh,
Last Waltz, and
yeah,
it
yeah,
summarizes it beautifully. They did such a great job with that movie, and
yeah.
I think,
Well, they were capable of playing so many different styles, but they had their unique sound, and yeah, and you don't hear too much about them anymore.
you know. So it goes under my list of
Terrific.
bands that I think are, underrated.
Yep.
Next one. Let's see here. I have, well, this one's a little bit more on the modern side for you, everyone, but Rage Against the Machine.
Mm-hmm.
And I know we talked about this earlier, and you're like, well, but I think I think we need Rage back right now, more
Mm-hmm.
than ever.
Yep.
Because, not to get political here at all, but there's so much going on in the world that they speak to that, and they never ever backed away or shied away
No.
from speaking about things that were real important. And we need that again, because there's no bands really doing that the way they do.
Yeah. I mean, they were a social justice group, and they were able to tap into and really convey the anger and the just
It,
the
they remind me of like the album Straight Outta Compton. When
mm-hmm.
NWA put Straight
Oh
Outta
yeah.
Compton, that just ticked everybody off. I mean, the entire, you know,
Yep.
it was speaking what was happening in Compton. And how many years ago did that album come out, and where are we right now?
Yep.
So
Yep.
nothing's changed.
Yep.
Sad.
Excellent
And
choice.
that music was designed to bring attention to it and hopefully invoke change. And here we are. We can't seem to get past something like this. And I feel bad for us as a nation, but I feel also very positive too that we'll overcome this because we are the United States of America. And
Yep.
I'm going to leave it at that. And my last one, and I saved the last one because it is one of my most favorite bands ever, but I don't talk about it enough, and that is 10 Years After.
Mm-hmm.
I love Alvin Lee. Alvin Lee, when I first heard him play, I actually watched the video Woodstock, and I had never heard the band 10 Years After. And as soon as that performance was done, I hit the rewind button and I listened to it like 4 or 5 more times. I was just that blown away. And the funny thing is, just about 3 or 4 weeks ago, I was looking online. There's an auction going on of Alvin Lee's guitar that he played there, which is the piece, his amplifier, and his pants that he wore on stage at Woodstock. And there's no price on it. Obviously, it's an auction, but that was an iconic moment in Woodstock history and in Woodstock itself. Just the peace symbol alone. But to see him play, and we did this thing about covers, and it's a cover song that they are most famous for, and that doesn't bother me at all.
Right.
Because Alvin Lee brings to the table his unique style guitar playing, which is his rip roaring blues, and that's what they do the best, and they don't shy away from it. They're an English band who love the blues. They were influenced heavily from the Delta blues up and down the Mississippi, and it's very evident. And they play it so well. And I never get.
And again, so underrated.
Truly underrated. Sadly, Alvin Lee passed away due to surgical issues, complications, and he died too young.
Yep.
Anyway, that's my 5 A sides.
Yep. All right, let me talk through my
people A's. Agree with mine. Do you like my picks?
I do. Excellent picks.
Thanks.
And and a couple of them ended up being a couple of my B sides.
Oh,
and
did they really?
and Frank Zappa was just kind of his own category. so um, so so my top five, and again, these are in no particular order. Um, but I put down Cheap Trick. Cheap Trick is an underrated band.
Yeah,
They
yeah, I agree with that.
they are a phenomenal band. They've been around since the '70s. They're still going. They define rock in
But their
terms of their
story is so cool how they formed as a band.
yeah.
That's
Well,
the most unlikely way of getting together as a band, but it worked, you know?
yeah, and their music is it's melodic, and yet it has a sense of garage band type rock, like garage rock. It has intense drive. It's just great music, and you just don't
It's
they don't get
happy
the
music.
recognition, and they appear all over the place, and but they don't get the recognition that I think they should. So that's one of them.
Love it.
My next one is the Kinks, and again, the Kinks. You know, they were highly influential. They came out in the early '60s, and they were highly influential in their in the way they approach songwriting, in their presentation. They were the early punks. They were the
Let me throw this out at you for a second. I'm going to bend your brain for a second on this one.
yeah.
What if the Kinks were a different name? Same music, same everything, change the name to something different.
I don't
Do you
know.
think that would have been? Do you think they would have gotten more notoriety? Because the name Kink is so weird. It
Yeah.
alludes to kinky maybe or whatever. And I'm stretching the truth on that one a little bit, but there are connotations to that word that could make people shy away.
But on the other side of that coin, they were appealing to a youth market, and the youth would have gravitated towards something like that because it was anti-establishment.
I was just
I don't
throwing
know.
it out.
It's an interesting question. It's an interesting take on that. I don't know. I don't know if it was if their production value or whatever was too raw. If it was just not refined enough for it to. I just don't know. But I think they have some wonderful tunes. If you go back and listen through their back
A
catalog,
lot of hits. Everybody knows a lot of their music,
yeah,
whether they get credit for it or not.
great stuff. I mean, and they were on the forefront in terms of using guitar distortion. They were, they were influential in a lot of areas. So the Kinks, definitely underrated band.
Nice job.
My next one is I go to the actually I'll take these. Next one is Roxy Music, and I know you and I talked a little bit about this beforehand, but
Here
so
we
for
go.
me, Roxy Music is very underrated. Yeah, they were initially associated with glam rock, but they were progressive in many ways. They again, their catalog of music is incredible. And then you think about, like, Brian Eno was a member at the very beginning, and Brian Eno then went on to be highly influential and a big. He's definitely not underrated as a person and producer and musician. He went on to produce U2 and other big acts. He Peter Gabriel, I believe, just a lot of David Bowie. They all had collaborations with him. He was very much on the forefront with electronic music and the electronics. But Roxy Music as a unit, yeah, they were glam, but they were a little bit more than that. Obviously, they're still putting out music to this day. But I think
What you're saying is tell everybody who's listening or watches this, you got to listen to some Roxy music because
Yep.
you're going to bring it up every time you can.
Yep.
You're going to bring it up all the time and try to shove it down my throat. And I'm going to say,
Yeah.
I don't know.
All right. So my next one, my fourth one, is XTC. This is an 80s band. And again, this is a band that if you listen to their music, there's some really very incredible music coming out of that came out of that band. And I think they would have gone much farther. The problem was that their lead singer and guitarist had such severe stage fright that he literally would be sick to the point where he couldn't go on stage. So basically, they had to they couldn't continue under that. So they created some incredible music in the studio, and it's just and it was in the '80s. And if you listen to their
Well,
catalog,
you know what? So did Steely Dan.
yeah, well, there's another one. Now they ended up touring more towards the end, before Brecker died, but they yeah, Steely Dan again was a I don't think they're underrated, but but they were a studio band. They utilized the studio, and so did XTC, and they created these mini gems. I think they're just a very underrated band when you hear their material. And then my fifth choice, changing directions somewhat, is Alice in Chains. I thought Alice in Chains was, they were the same time as Nirvana and Pearl Jam.
We talked about this already. And
yeah,
so
and
that is
Soundgarden.
my beat.
And but I felt that Alice in Chains was they were kind of they were under all those other bands, or they were considered the lesser of all those bands. And if you listen to the material, I think they are as strong, if not stronger than.
Jar of Flies is one of my favorite albums.
Yeah.
And, it's a solid album from
Yep.
start to end. And I think once you listen to that 2 or 3 times, you understand why.
Yep.
I personally love Alice in Chains. And again,
Yep.
they made my B-sides because
Yep.
they are just great. Here's our
Yep.
overlap here. And I'm so glad you and I agree on that one completely. I think that's a winner situation.
So let's talk B-sides. And do you have how many of mine were? Well, what did you think of my list?
I everything but Roxy Music. I think is definitely, we talked about the Kinks as well, and I went, yeah, for sure, and I was really pleased that you had that on. So I think it's funny that Zappa came back for both of us too.
Yeah.
Because I had to reevaluate. Because you know how this goes. I'm sitting here getting ready for the show over the week, and I'm thinking and thinking and thinking, and all of a sudden something just pop in your head and change your mind on something really quickly. And yeah, that's definitely more appropriate. So.
Yep.
All right, B for me. Let's start. Again, no particular order, but Jane's Addiction.
Okay.
I love Jane's Addiction. I think
I do too. I mean, I think they've got some really
their sound is so different.
Yeah,
and I think that's really what defines them, is because they are so unique in that sound. And when you hear a defining sound from a band, you generally see that band rise really far and go far.
Yeah.
And yet, I think they had some notoriety for a while, but it wasn't like apex notoriety.
Yeah.
I feel like on first listen, you go, whoa, that was an assault on my senses there, and I'm not quite sure how to process this.
Yep.
And then you listen to it again, and then again, and again, you go, oh, I get it. This is good.
Yep.
This is really good. And I think, again, and that's why we're calling it the bands that are underrated. Yep. I just think they came in a little lower, and I think they should be up a little higher.
Yep.
So anyhow, my next one, you and I talked about this already, and I'm going to go with it still, and that's Creed.
Okay.
I think I told you when I first heard them on the radio, I immediately had to go out and buy an album because I was just that blown away. I was that impressed. And as you listen to their music and you listen to them over and over, yes, there are some similarities between them and Pearl Jam in their sound, but they're different, very, very different. Their writing style is very different, no question about it. And, sadly, there are things that happen within the band that they just terminated that. And they were just getting good. I think they were just getting the momentum, and some of the press that went out after their last album was really hurtful. And, I understand criticism, being an artist myself and writing critiques and critiquing all the time, as well as you being in the music field and in the art field. But I feel I have a leg with my credentials to say what can be good. And again, you hold a doctorate in music, so I feel you definitely hold a leg. And when you are speaking, people should listen because you're educated. And I'm not as educated musical spectrum as you are. I'm just the album cover, read all the magazines and books, and listen to all the music kind of guy. I'm that kind of a junkie when it comes like that. But when it comes to a band like Creed, with Arms Wide Open, it just it's the epitome of a really well crafted, well written song. And I think that's kind of what a lot of their music was like. And whether you like Creed or not, that's okay. But as an underrated band goes, I think they're one of them.
Yep.
My next one, I think some people are going to go, yeah, you nailed that one. And that's Motorhead. Lemmy.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah.
Lemmy. Need I say anymore? They were so far ahead of their time, and they were unlike anything else out there. I mean, I think I've heard people try to say, well, they're kind of like Black Sabbath, but they're not. And then I heard people saying, well, they're kind of in the Judas Priest era. I'm like, no, they're just, no, they're Motorhead.
Yeah.
That's just, listen to how that grinds. That's speed metal before speed metal.
Yeah.
And there it is. They had a long career, and do you hear them? No.
Yeah, you don't.
Diehard fans will go to their grave swearing they're the best band in the world, and that's fine. But again, I'm just saying, as far as an underrated band goes, Motorhead's up there. I think they deserve to be on the list.
Yep.
Let's see here. I think I have. We both agreed on Alice in Chains, so
yeah,
that was one of mine. And my last one falls in that same genre and that same time frame. Again, it's all like that, and that was 311. Again, a very unique band. I love their how they got their name 311. I won't get into it, but it's a funny story. It involves public nudity, so it's
yeah,
it's rather interesting. So look up the history of 11. But you know what? They made a mark. They were kind of like a band, kind of like the Red Hot Chili Peppers, in the sense that they were all over the map musically and spectrum, but that unique sound that they put forward. And they were one of these bands that was just building momentum, and then just where did they go? And I love listening to 311. And they were played on the radio quite frequently, and just like, that's it. There's no more. Poof, out of nowhere. Just what happened. So.
Yep.
And I think a strong band. I think they had lots and lots of potential, and had that momentum. For whatever reason, I just don't know what happened. So, whatever it is, that's why it's on the list. Underrated. All right, what do you got?
So we both agreed on Frank Zappa. We both agreed on the band, and we both agreed on live. Those were on my B-sides. So
really?
Yeah. So Frank Zappa was kind of, I couldn't really decide.
I said his own entity.
So, but I have, actually I have three more. So I have.
You cheater. You got more than me.
Well, I'm going to do one that kind of is an outlier. I wasn't sure how to define it, but let me do the other two. One is Blue Oyster Cult. You and I had talked a little bit. I had said Purple, but then I went back and I thought about it, and Blue Oyster Cult falls kind of in a similar vein. And, I mean, they had some great stuff, and you don't really hear too much about them. And
you don't hear anything about them. My God, if you hear Godzilla or any of, it's just like,
it's
who is that?
Yeah. It was such a great sound. So that was, I think, again, just one that hasn't gotten the recognition for what they were and what they are. I mean, they're still out there doing stuff. They're doing, smaller venues, but still kicking it. And then the other one, and you and I had talked a little bit about this, was the Animals. I felt that the Animals should be on that list, on this list. And again, they were, you know,
I
they
think more people know Eric Burden after the
solo,
Animals
yes.
because they weren't around for very long. So you know, you could say that about Nas with Todd Rundgren when he was in
Yeah.
Nas, but Todd Rundgren went beyond Nas,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
you know, more people know his music as Todd Rundgren. And
But the Animals were they had some great blues based rock, and you know, they were important at the time, and you just don't hear very much about them. You may hear one or two songs, but I think they need more recognition than what they have. But so the final one, this one is this is kind of an outlier
Don't you dare
because
say Rush.
no, this is it's an obscure name to most people, and that's why I consider this person to be an outlier. And that name is Link Wray. Are you familiar with Link Wray?
Never
So
heard.
Link Wray, believe it or not, well, he came out in the late 50s. He was a guitar player and singer. He actually
You
influenced
are older than me, so
well, but he influenced Jimmy Page. He influenced Pete Townsend, as well as many other big names that came out in the 60s with blues rock. And that's why I kind of put him on the outlier sense, because
what's the last name? Link what?
the last name is Ray, W-R-A-Y. And you look him up, you'll be surprised that, you know, he's actually in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. But like you, how many people know the name? And the only reason I know the name is
I
because,
wasn't alive in the 50s.
well, I wasn't either. but he was important beyond that. He was important through the 70s, believe it or not. And he the only reason I knew about him was from reading up on the history of some of these other bands, and this name kept popping up, and his what he meant to these
Curiosity got the better of you, and you had to go and listen.
And so, yeah, I listened, and I love it. You know, it's definitely it has his early stuff. Well, it's blues based, but it has that surf rock kind of sound, the twanginess, but just intense. You know, kind of beyond the what was expected of that time period. I mean, he was definitely a very forward-thinking type musician. He actually just passed away. But anyway, that's why I put him on the list, and I have him as an outlier.
I'll give you the outlier part of it because he is so obscure, but I understand where your thinking is on all that. But
yeah,
as far as the picks go, and you know, let me just touch base really quickly on what you were mentioning about Deep Purple. And you know, when we were talking about this, I was totally in disagreement with you on putting it on the list because they evolved. Deep Purple went through a lot of metamorphoses over the years. You know, Richie Blackmore certainly was the guiding light, but the band changed throughout some time there. And yeah, there was some periods of time that maybe the band wasn't as influential as it's when it first started. But I think there's a lot of recognition, and thanks to Smoke on the Water, they're in infamy. You know, there's no way that song right there, those three chords, are always going to be what rock and roll is power chords, I think. And that's why I didn't want it on the list, because I think that they are who they are, and they are recognized. And
well, and you know where the power chords came from? Link Wray.
And look at that, how it comes full circle.
Yep.
See how I tied that together and didn't even realize I was going to do that. But yeah, so I think that was really, really cool, and that was the end of our list, right? So
yep, it's the end of the list.
I think for our next topic, we had to kind of discuss this a little bit, and I think we're going to get ourselves in some hot water. Where I'm always interested in getting a little bit of trouble, but we thought we'd talk a little bit about electric guitars and acoustic guitars in rock and roll, and how we feel about those and who plays them, maybe, and possibly, yeah, do we like acoustic guitars in our rock and roll or not? Let's find out. Anyway.
And if you watch the other video that we just put out on how we define rock and roll, I would say it's rock and not rock and roll. But we'll let you watch that video
What you just said, Dale, is you have to go back and listen to
you gotta watch the other video.
Listen to this. So if you listen to this one and you didn't listen to the other one, you have to stop right now, go back, listen to the other one, and then come back.
Exactly.
So, anyway, thanks for watching, everybody. Hit the subscribe button again and catch us on the B side. All right. Have a good day, everybody.
See ya.